One. Great. We're live. Everybody, welcome to the channel Digital Asset News, or more importantly, DCA on a Friday. So first of all, thanks everybody for stopping in for the live stream. Let's talk about just what the heck is going on with this crazy market. But before we do that, let me introduce some people if you don't know them. To my immediate right, which will now be my immediate left, I think, that's Ben from Into The Cryptoverse. And if you don't know, Ben and James's channel there's a link in the description. You can check that out. And of course, we also have James from InvestAnswers here to answer some of the more difficult questions. And then I am just here to just be a little quick moderation. But today, there's good stuff because we need to get into it. Let's be honest. Q1 has not been kind to us in 2022. So the questions are as such. With all the good news that's been going around, you can take that from a plethora of sources. Biden executive order, Stripe payments, institutional money coming in. James, I'm going to lean on you for that one. Why is the market sucking? It just seems to be dropping or at least going sideways. And then also, I just want to ask, what's the sentiment out there? Because for your channels, I mean, I watch both you guys, and I leave the comments and I see some things, but what do you feel is like the sentiment out there? And are the people that were maybe the get rich quickers are kind of just leaving out, and are we capitulating? Also want to ask you, what's your outlook to finish out Q1? Is there any kind of bounce to be had? Or are we looking forward to Q2? And what could be the catalyst to actually make this thing move? And lastly, let's talk about some whale games. Wall number 3, Ben, I will lean on you for that. So gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for coming in again. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
So let's get into it, shall we? So let's talk. James, I want to start with you. With all the good news, and because we've been talking about this, I mean, today, just had Stripe came out with their access to 180 countries, 3 million plus websites, and billions of dollars when they reach globally. On top of that, the Biden executive order, where it was a pretty positive tone. And then all these money and institutionals coming in. Yet, what do we see? Well, the market itself is at 1.8 trillion, and I think we've actually fallen below that. So why is this happening? Why is it going sideways? And what do you think is going on?
Well, I think you can't look at Bitcoin in isolation. You got to look at all of the markets. And we saw a lot of crazy stuff happening with commodities. We saw a big move towards risk off assets from risk on. But there are a couple of bright spots, and there's been a ton of good news, but it's just the timing is bad. Black swan events, wars do not help things, obviously. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and markets hate uncertainty. But if you look at the Bitcoin itself, it's definitely behind the scenes. OTC buying is happening. And you see that by the drainage off the exchanges every single day. Tons of coins leaving Coinbase, tons of coins leaving Binance, etc. And hedge funds are coming in, big money's coming in, and they're buying in. It's like a repeated record at this stage, but we're going to see some big action in Q2, I do believe. Now, also, every cohort is accumulating with the exception of those between, I think, 10,000 Bitcoin, 100,000. They haven't been accumulating. They've been actually shedding a little bit, but everybody else has. We're talking the 100K plus wallets, and everything beneath 10K has been accumulating. And there's also some other good stuff coming, like the volcano bonds in El Salvador. There's also there's a couple of gray clouds as well. There's big option bets for a 60K in April Bitcoin, like $5,000 bets were made, as well as $4,000 bets at 50K. So 50K looks very possible for April, but at the same time, over the next 2 weeks, there's big bets for 34K Bitcoin. So I think we might have a little dump before the pump, which is typical behavior. I don't see us getting to 34K. And so that's kind of what we see. But if we do get, in answer to your question, if we do get peace, and it looks like we've made some inroads there this morning, if the regulation is coming, the spot ETF, now there's rumors from Raoul Pal that April could be the spot ETF approval date. I don't believe that at all. I thought, I think it's going to be out further than that, like late summer or September. And fiat has changed forever. So who trusts fiat anymore? There's nobody. So,
that's good.
You know, there's a couple of little gray clouds, but a lot of sunshine. So I don't want to sound like a hopium dealer, but that's what I see.
Yeah, I know. Like I've seen your videos, and I of course I've watched Ben's, and it seems like you're one of the ones that think that the institutional money is like right behind this big paywall, and they're just almost there. And I'd love to believe you. I want to believe you, James. I do, but I've heard it for so long. and I think a lot of people have as well. I mean, when I look at it, I'm like, why can't there just be more long-term investors? But I think there's more things behind the scenes that are going on. But I like where your head's at. I hope that you're right. I'm praying that you're right, but we'll see how it goes. Ben, same thing to you, my friend. What do we got here?
Yeah, Q1. I've never really been super optimistic about Q1, as you guys know, over the last couple of months. I think when we started Q1, I was like, okay, best case scenario, we stay neutral, but good chance it's going to be bearish. I think neutral is getting back to 46K in the next few weeks. That's at least where the quarterly open was.
Yeah.
There's some interesting trends from like a quantitative perspective. Like looking at monthly returns, like for Bitcoin, like discretized monthly. And one of the interesting things is that after red Januaries, we've always seen double-digit gain Februaries, and that actually happened again this year. And it didn't seem like it was going to happen because it seemed like Bitcoin was actually down going into the last day of February, and then it pumped 15% on the very last day. But so March is kind of like September, and that it doesn't tend to be a great month. I believe like 7 out of 11 Marches have been red. But so I'm not really expecting any fireworks in March. But April actually does tend to be a good month for crypto. I mean, sometimes you have to take this stuff with a grain of salt because it doesn't really be a thing. I don't really know, but seasonality can sometimes be a thing. You'll often see major moves by Ethereum at certain phases and Bitcoin at certain phases, and so I am a little bit more optimistic about April than March, right? Yeah. So I think that heading forward, we always have to talk about the downside risk, right? The downside risk is always there, but I'm still feeling kind of neutral. I'm not really seeing Bitcoin pumping to a new all-time high in like a month or two. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're at a very uncertain time right now. We've just been trending sideways for the last month or two. First of all, we've been trending sideways for a year now. If you compare the 30 to 60K range, that's completely true. But even recently, even after that, we had a pretty brutal downtrend for 8 weeks, 10 weeks in a row, and then we've just been going sideways for a few weeks now. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that I'd like to see kind of what happens at the end of Q1 before I really take a stand on what I think Q2 is going to be about.
Man, we're so close, right? What's the date today? March 11th?
Yeah,
March 11th. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're really driving home that point, and we're very close. And the one thing I'm going to ask you guys about this is, so Q1 is about to expire. Now we're going to go into Q2. We don't know where it's going to go, but I'm always worried about, because once in the United States, as far as like April 15th, that's tax time. Now for some people, that's a good day because they get some money back, but not for a good amount of people like myself, where I'll be paying a ton. So what do you think real quick about April? How are those months statistically in the past? Do you recall? Because when I took a look at it, I think there was like a couple of years where it was just brutal, and a couple were just like sideways.
Can I share my screen?
Sure. Let's take a look.
Let me see if
monthly performance heat map.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna let me. Actually, you can log
my screen.
Right? You can. Do you know the website, right?
Let's see.
What is it? It's the one the app.intothecryptoverse.com.
I got so many app into the block, app into the cryptoverse. Okay, I got you. Here's my dashboard. Hey, let's show. Can we do a quick peek behind the scenes for your website, Ben?
Go to charts, because I want to get to this question that you just asked. Go to charts.
Wait. Can I show this?
You go to charts.
Okay, too late. All right, charts. Charts it is.
Yep.
So everybody, real quick, we are behind the scenes with Ben's Into the Cryptoverse. And actually, I linked it in the description. So if you want to check out Ben's site, it's in there for you to check out.
If you scroll down to the keep going. Actually, just scroll down the actual chart so I can see them. There's a table with all the monthly returns, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But there it is, the one in the middle, the monthly returns, that one. Yeah, so I mean, there you can get a quick glimpse. By the way, you should change the dark mode. If you go to the top right, there's a little moon. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So here you can see what I'm talking about, right? Like March, a lot of times after red Januaries, you get a green February. March doesn't really tend to be that great, but April is usually pretty good. And even the 3 times that April was red, it was barely red. Like it was only like 2 or 3% red. So that's like from like a statistical perspective, like I'm a little bit more optimistic about April than I have been for March. Like if you look at March, we see negative 24%, negative 32%, negative 19%, negative 15%. And then so far this month is negative 10% as well. So I wasn't as optimistic about March. Feeling a little bit better about April though.
Okay. So this reaffirms what I was saying. Q1's kind of sucking and it's going to suck for a while. So maybe April's going to be better. I like May. This looks pretty good.
Yeah. And anybody who has significant money knows how to tax plan. They're not going to be surprised. Oh, I owe $250,000 in crypto taxes. They'll be prepared for that. So they're not going to be dumping on the 14th of April. That dumpage could have actually happened in March historically, hence all the red in March. We don't know.
So yeah. Okay, let me jump back. So if you want to check out that link in the description, you can check out Ben's site and go from there. All right. So that will take care of that first part. Let's go into this one, the sentiment. And I think in the beginning, I mean, gosh, we were writing a pretty good high sentiment for what was going on in the Q4 of 2021. And then moving into 2022, it's just around the corner. How has the sentiment been on your channels for what you guys have seen? Ben, since you're up there, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I've actually seen a pretty big shift recently, which is it has me more optimistic, at least in terms of like the sentiment. One of the things that is hard to manage is when we initially go down after a mania phase, it can actually be quite challenging because there's a lot of people that get really upset. And I mean, everyone gets upset to some degree, but there's some people that express it in a different way. And I find that that's a nice way of saying it. Right? I find that the people that express it in a different way, they tend to leave the cryptoverse after a few weeks of it being read. And unfortunately, you know, if you can just stick around for the long haul, it does tend to work out for the people that just stick around. What I've noticed in the sentiment is that there's a lot fewer trolls, right? There's a lot fewer people like complaining about things. I think there's a bit more, you know, I don't know if I want to say apathy, but to some level there's like, you know, I think people are somewhat apathetic. Like a lot of people recognize that crypto is the future and that it's likely going to trend up with time, but who knows what it's going to do in the next couple of months. I think we're sort of getting to those people that recognize that, look, in the short term, it's really anyone's guess, but in the long term, it is likely to trend higher. And I think that's sort of the core audience now. So it's kind of like the audience that you would have had in, say, you know, in prior markets where we weren't going up like crazy, right? I mean, these are the people that hopefully they keep sticking around. They stand to gain the most over the long haul. So yeah, I've noticed some sentiment changes over the last couple of months, and it's funny because over, you know, even if we have future corrections, I have a feeling the people are here today are probably going to stick around. I mean, if you've made it this far, you really have no reason to not just kind of keep on going, I think.
Yeah, if you made it this far, you got your medals. James, what do you got on your channel? Is everybody pretty like happy, gleeful, just happy to be there, be around it? They're like, man, this is awful.
To be honest, there's no problems on the channel per se. The problems tend to exist in Twitter. That's where the angry people live. But I'm not going to go there right now. But mathematically, if you look at, you know, there are people called tourists that come in and think, oh, I made a little bit of money in Shiba, you know, and then they start playing and thinking they're God and they lose everything. 70% of those people lose all their money in a very short time frame, and the duration of that time frame is actually 90 days. So it's funny if you take, you know, a hot exuberant market like 2021, some people make some money fast, but it doesn't take them a long time to lose it and be kicked out of the market, and that leaves a bad taste in their mouth. And I've seen a couple of those, and you hear about them. It's like, yeah, I lost everything. I'm never touching crypto again, or never touching assets. But most people are mature enough to know that, you know, it's good to garner as much knowledge as you can from people who've been around the block for more than 3 decades or whatever, or experts like Ben and yourself in crypto for a long time and just stay the course, especially when you see all other pillars, all other asset classes hitting the tank. That should give people optimism. So again, as Ben correctly says, if they've been through it this far, they'll be there for the long haul. So totally agree.
Yeah. What's the phrase? When you're going through hell, just keep going. I guess that's kind of like what it is here. But, you know, it brings up an important question. Like you said that people come in here and they get to, you know, you have the Dogecoin millionaires, as I call them, or the Shiba Inu marvelous ones. Do you think sometimes that people have to go through that? They have to go through the rug pulls and they have to go through the nonsense where they think that they are the gods and then kind of lose a ton to actually get on the right path? Or do you think that no one should be subjected to that? And I'll stick with you, James, in that one.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I think the younger the investor is, the more they can risk. And I also believe you want to make your, you know, hard lessons, learn them early and have those scars that you can take with you for the rest of your life. That's been my principle. And I think there's a lot of learning there. So for example, you get rugged once and you're young. That's never going to happen to you again. You're not going to be like our poor friend, what's his name, with the basketball team. I always forget his name.
Oh, Dallas Mavericks owner? Mark
Cuban? He got rugged twice. He's a billionaire. So I was like, you should stick with whatever TV shows and basketball teams and stuff. So, but I think for the young people out there that are new, you get smacked, get kicked in the teeth, whatever you want to call it, get back on the horse, but just do your homework, be much more diligent around what you invest in. And that's the big lesson. As we said, 2022 is the year where you do not want to be in garbage coins. And I used to say 95% are garbage. It's now 18,000 tokens. 99% of them are slow, multi-level marketing rug pulls.
They are not. It's not going to go on anywhere. So Ben, I'm going to ask you the same thing, but I'm going to have you bring us back because I was listening to your whale games video, and bring us back to when you were in grad school, 2012, 2013, somewhere around there, I think it was. And you were talking about how, you know, you had been investing and then all of a sudden you're like, I would really like to get into this market because it would just had a huge slide, but you couldn't because you spent all your money. So is that like the great learning lesson where you're like, shoot, maybe I should do something a little bit differently?
Yeah, it's a great learning lesson. And I think it sort of gets me a reputation of being fairly risk averse, you know? But it's just like, it's sort of like lessons learned the hard way. And actually 2013 was brutal because, I mean, again, I was a grad student. It's not like I had that much invested, but I watched whatever I did have invested, which was a lot for me at the time because I was a grad student. I was on a graduate student stipend. I watched it drop 90%, you know, and I'm sitting here thinking like, well, I mean, it's going to take forever to get this back, you know? And then, but after watching it drop its first like 70% or something, I was like, all right, well, this is a good time to, you know, to put in what I have left. And then I watched it drop another 50% or so. And sort of, I sort of learned the lesson back then, you know, it's always good to have cash on hand, no matter what. You know, if you have some type of a position, at least draw from it. Don't completely deplete it. And that was the lesson. I sort of employed that in 2018 because I thought 6K again was a good price in 2018. And then again, the floor fell out. I mean, again, today it doesn't really matter. So it's the constellation price. But again, you know, is that going to happen today? I don't know. Like, I don't know if we're going to go down. I don't know if we're not. But I sure as hell have cash on hand in case we do. So yeah, that's sort of the lesson learned the hard way. I'd rather have a position or have some cash on hand to continue to DCA than to, you know, be left without any dry powder to not take advantage of dips like that.
Yeah. And I got to agree. And like, even on my channel, I'll hear people who get scammed. And I mean, we all talk about the scams. Don't, you know, be careful with the emails, make sure that you're not, putting your wallet in danger and downloading these malicious apps, go to the source, all that stuff. But I still get people who say, I got scammed over, I got screwed. And I'll always ask them the same thing. Well, how much was it? And a lot of times it's like, well, it wasn't that much. Very rare is it like my whole life savings, and that's awful. But I will tell you, all those people that got screwed over and scammed, I will tell you right now, they will not happen to them again. And that's just one of those things where sometimes the pain is the best teacher. All right. So we talked about what's going on now. Let's talk about what could potentially go on in a little bit of time. So here's the big question, which is this: what's your outlook to finish out Q1, which you kind of talked about? But as far as Q2 comes around, April, May, June, how are we going to fix, not how are we, but how do things get into a better place? Where do you see things going? And what could be the actual catalyst to get us to that next point? James, I'm going to start with you because I know you've got a lot of data that points to institutional money. So let's hear some.
It's definitely happening. I bet my bottom dollar on it. Bet anybody here in this channel, no problem. But there's just again, a lot of good things on the horizon. The problem is we've got to get through the dark clouds first. Dark cloud number one, the Fed meeting. It's going to be 25 basis points. They can't rattle the markets more than that. Plus, they're so behind the curve anyway. That's true. But the year yield curve is inverting. GDP rates are going to zero. So hopefully March will get rid of that final dark cloud and open the gates for April. That we saw historically a pretty good green month. So we'll see. My biggest concerns, though, are the true Bitcoin narrative. Where is that going to go? So, for example, if you look at the risk of stagflation, which I know is coming, that means recession is negative, inflation is high. It's the kiss of death for any economy. That means money will flow into safe harbors and extremely high growth, high profitable names too on the equity side. On the crypto side, I think it's only a matter of time before people are going to start looking for a way to store large volumes of fiat. Where else are you going to put it? You can't put it in gold, you can't put it in bonds, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you can buy some palladium, but that's more volatile than meme stocks. Wheat, the same thing. Wheat. So it's just a strange world, but we do have some of the good stuff like that. I'm really excited for that Bitcoin bond in El Salvador. That's going to be nice. And a couple of other things. And when I look at the big bets made out, again, on the option side, that's positive too.
Hey, real quick. Yeah. Real quick, before we get to Ben, talk to us about those volcano bonds in El Salvador. Why do you like them so much? Why do you think that's going to be a big push?
Well, what I'm most excited about is obviously the bond market. The traditional bond market's toast.
Right.
If these guys pull this off, that's a game changer. You have a Bitcoin-based bond fund. You have the ability for people to not only bring money in, hold it for 5 years, pay a small coupon, and get some heavy upside down the line. If you're looking for alpha returns, there's not many places you can get it guaranteed. And this is an exciting place to park and take that 5-10 year risk. This could be a game changer for the whole bond market, and the ability for cities like El Zonte or whatever, they're launching that Bitcoin city to do those types of things. And if it is a success, you know what's going to happen next. It'll be a domino effect. There'll be maybe a village in Lugano, Switzerland, which will do the same thing. And then someplace in Haiti, who knows where. The sky is the limit.
You know, the IMF will come out and go, we don't approve of this. There's no way this is going to happen.
But that's also the big change we've seen happen with the fiat world. Nobody trusts central banks anymore. Nobody trusts the Bank of England, ECB, the Fed. Nobody trusts fiat after what happened in Canada, Russia, etc. So it's just the world has changed. Again, I always say we saw 10 years of change happen in 12 months with C19. We've seen 10 years of change happen to fiat in 2 months. And everything is just moving so fast. It's a very exciting time to be alive.
Yeah. Thank you, Fed Reserve. All right. Ben, same question to you. What do we got, man? Where are we going?
You know, I think as much as I like the news and stuff, and I want to believe that these things will have a big impact on price, I honestly don't think they really will impact the price. I think that generally what I've seen is in bull markets, people don't care about bearish news, and in bear markets, people don't care about bullish news. They have a way of making the price pump or dump in the short term, but the overall trend remains the same. So like even in late 2020 or early 2021, you could have found some bearish news. It's just that no one cared about it. You know, I mean, it's like today, like, you know, like over the last 3 months when we've been in a downtrend, there's been no shortage of good news for Bitcoin. You know, if trading Bitcoin on the news was actually possible, I think that there would be a lot of more richer people. But clearly it's not the case, because we look around and there's been so much great news for Bitcoin over the last 3 months, but it's not reflected in the price, right? It's not reflected in the price. So what I generally think is that what we really need is not news or anything like that. It's time is what we need. Like we need time. The fair value of Bitcoin, according to our logarithmic regression fit to all data, is currently at around $34,500. That's like the fair value, 34.5K. And we're currently trading just above that, right? About $4,000 above it. So we're slightly overvalued when thinking about it like that.
Mhm.
If we're at the fair value, then I mean it's a reasonable investment to make, or even slightly above it like we are now, slightly below it. The further we, if we just stay sideways for months at a time, then we're going to become undervalued because the fair value is monotonically increasing, right? So the fair value of Bitcoin continues to go up with time.
Right.
Therefore, the longer we don't go up with time, it only makes the case for Bitcoin, like as an investment, that much stronger. So I would say there's not really any single bit of news that's going to do it. What it is going to be time and the extension from the fair value. If we get too far extended down below it, it's going to be a great time to buy Bitcoin. You could argue even now is a decent time. Like, it's not the best time. I don't say that lightly, right? I mean, I love Bitcoin, and I've seen it during undervaluation phases. I've seen it during overvaluation phases, right? Right now, it's like a moderate time. Like, it's not the best time you can imagine, but it's also not the worst time you can imagine. It's sort of like an in-between phase. So really, the next thing that I think will kickstart Bitcoin's run is just kind of spending a bit more time, allowing for some of the longer-term moving averages to slowly catch up to where we are, allowing the fair value to continue to increase. I mean, the fair value by the end of this year should be closer to, I think, 40K or so. I mean, it's only going to go up. So, I mean, imagine what it's going to be in 18 months, and then in 24 months, and then in 36 months. It's just going to keep going up, and then eventually we'll shoot back above it. And then at the time, there's going to be all sorts of great news that accompanies it. But remember, there's going to be bad news too. It's just that people don't care about the bad news in a bull market, just like in a bear market, they don't care about the good news.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge you on one thing, Ben, though. I mean, Bitcoin and other risk-on assets has had the kitchen sink thrown at it. War, FUD, you name it, bans, on and on and on. It's still there, and it's still making higher lows. So you say at 38.5, say hypothetically, 38.5, you say it's not the best time to get in, but the floor is maybe 35 now. So it's 8, 9, 10% away from the floor versus the upside going back to 68K. So the way I look at things is the downside is far smaller than the potential upside. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that we are putting in higher lows. I just again, this is one of those things where it puts me in a weird position because it's like I want to see Bitcoin go higher. Like, I would actually benefit more if it goes up, not if it goes down.
We all do.
In late 2018, it was also technically putting in higher lows, and then we still dropped 50%. So even in March of 2020, we were moving higher. Or January, February, March, we were moving higher, and then we all woke up one morning and our entire portfolio was down 60%. So I don't mean to say it like the charts look bad. I mean, from like a daily time frame, things look relatively good in terms of higher lows and that kind of stuff. It's just to say, like, I mean, like, would you rather, like, buying Bitcoin at $3,800 2 years ago was a very undervalued area because the fair value was, 2 or 3 times higher than that price. So right now, the fair value, we're around the fair value. So basically, it's like it's a moderate risk. Like, it could play out if we hold it like we did in mid 2013, or if the floor falls out like it did in 2018 and late 2019 and in 2014, then it becomes like an even better risk to take on, because then you're undervalued compared to the fair value. There's no guarantee we make it there, and I agree. Bitcoin has had the kitchen sink thrown at it, right? It's had everything thrown at it, and it has held up fairly well. But what happens if it continues to get more stuff thrown at it for the next 6 months? Like, how long can it take before it can? That's my concern.
And that's exactly my thesis. And I always look at both sides. And I think one of the dangers is if you have the scar tissue from 2018, you keep going back. But this is a different ball game now. It's completely different. In 2018, 3% of the money in Bitcoin was institutional. Today, it's 80%. It's absolutely a different league. And I think the volatility has gone down a lot more, and the supply is a lot more finite than ever before, a lot less, a lot more scant, as I like to say. So again, I keep on thinking, what are the downsides here? Will we ever see 20K again? I'll bet my bottom dollar, no, we'll never see 20K again unless it's World War III. Then
right, we might not. And for full disclosure, like I am buying Bitcoin at these prices. Like it's one thing to say it could go down, but what I am doing with my money is I am buying Bitcoin on a weekly basis. But I also recognize that like it could go down further. Like I want to be more optimistic and say like it can't, but I've been in that position so many times where I thought it couldn't and then it did. So I don't want to say that it can't. I guess is my point.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I mean, just to piggyback on what James said about institutional money, and I don't think it's like everybody loves it that it's here. I hate it. I hate it right now that there's so much institutions right now. I know everybody's like, oh, but it's great because they're going to have so many things here. Look, if anybody's going to manipulate anything, it's going to be big institutions, and just look no farther than the futures. So I know like everybody's talking about it's gonna be great and everything else. Well, if they're here and there's so much money to be had, yet here we are with the price. And I know at some point maybe it'll come up, but man, I got to tell you, I was watching this video. It was Roger Ver from 2012. And the exact same things we were talking about right now was the exact same thing he was talking about back then. He was talking about ETFs and institutional money flowing in and everything else. I know everybody wants it. I hope you guys are right. Well,
it's already happening. Just look at your great state of Texas. Look what's happened there. 30% of the hash rate by the end of this year will be out of Texas. That some people say it's ridiculous.
Well, sure. But that's great for job creation. And you know what? Hash rate was supposed to follow price, as I remember. And that was like one of the other big things that came about. And we're kind of making our way through that. And I do agree with you. This is a different time because this is much, even if you take a look at like the 4-year cycles or lengthening cycles, those type of things. I mean, everything is a little bit off. So when Ben and you talk about time, I think that's one of the big things that actually smooth everything out. We'll go from there.
And to tell people a very funny story, I built a model in 2019. Bitcoin was like, I think $4,000, $6,000. I can't remember. And I was sharing it with people, friends and family and stuff. I said, this thing, I guarantee you, it's going to be 108,000 by the year 2030. And I said, I will guarantee you this price by 2030. And they thought I was crazy. And again, but it was heavily sandbag model is based on very simple adoption curves. Again, it is a completely different ballgame. If you asked me back in 2019, would we be where we are today with adoption and El Salvador and everything else, regulations? I'd say no way. Maybe 2025. So we've accelerated a lot, and also the macro backdrop of where we are. Anyway, enough on that.
Yeah, and that's one more thing. Like if we would have had the president of the United States sign an executive order in 2017, we would have lost our minds. We were big on like when Katy Perry put these stupid things on her fingernails, and everybody, that was like the big story for the day. I kid you not. So before we go into the next part, which is I think one of my favorites, this wallet number 3, I find it fascinating. But before we do that, talk real quick because like we're in this sideways slump. Ben, I kind of know your position, so I want to start with you. What are you investing into right now? Are you doing any kind of altcoins? I don't think you are, and tell us why.
Well, I mean, if you pull up a historical snapshot of coin market cap on January 17th, 2021, and compare it to today, the price of Bitcoin was basically the same. Ethereum was at 3,200, right? Cardano was at $1.50. Solana was at like 140, 150. Polkadot was at $25. What do these markets have a tendency to do? Even though Bitcoin can go sideways, all Bitcoin valuations can bleed. And look, I mean, if you were smart enough to go all in on Luna, then congratulations, right? I mean, you outperformed the market. But the problem is that we don't know which altcoins are going to outperform Bitcoin ahead of time. And so because I don't know, I'm not smart enough to know which altcoin is going to outperform Bitcoin when Bitcoin's in a downtrend. I only focus on Bitcoin because again, we have a way of rationalizing, well, it's not really down that much. But all you have to do is you go back and look at the price back in January when Bitcoin was the same exact price that it is today. And almost every single altcoin in the top 25 or probably top 100, almost all of them were at higher prices than they are today, even though Bitcoin was at the exact same price. So I say, if you're just DCAing your cost basis, you're going to be over the last several months, as I've been saying, I've been staying the hell away from altcoins ever since Bitcoin closed below its 21-week EMA. They tend to underperform Bitcoin. If you look at the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation, historically, every time on the weekly close below the 20-week estimate, the weekly close below it for Bitcoin, Ethereum has always, out of like 7 or 8 times, it's always underperformed Bitcoin from measuring it from weekly close below the bull market support band, the 20-week SMA, to then weekly open above it whenever Bitcoin gets back above it. During that time, while there could be local times where Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin, if you just take it from point A to point B, Bitcoin has always outperformed Ethereum during that time and time again. So I say, I mean, I don't really care if the altcoins are going to give us a scam pump on any given day. All I care about is the fact that most of their valuations against Bitcoin are bleeding right now. And furthermore, a lot of their valuations against Ethereum are bleeding as well. So as I've said before, I think it's time, and we said this in January as well, right? It's time to focus on the blue chips. If you want to take some risks on some altcoins, you can, but you should know that, I mean, if this type of market continues, if in 3 months Bitcoin is still at $38,000, I can practically guarantee you, I can't guarantee anything, but I would strongly suggest that there's a good chance that the altcoin valuations are lower than they are today if Bitcoin is still at 38K in 3 months, because it'll be a choppy market. It'll be a choppy market.
Perfect. James, now let's talk about running into the burning building for altcoins. When everybody's running around and you gotta do these things, what do you do?
Right now, like I do believe our buying opportunity was both on January 24th and February 24th. I saw that as the bottom of the crypto and equity market, and that's where, like, I was 30% cash and I deployed everything. So I'm out of cash right now, and there's not much I'd actually buy. We had some things that have gone up, gone down. The volatility has been crazy in both markets, but I think it's getting steadier now as we see the light going forward. Again, fingers crossed for some type of resolution, some type of peace in Ukraine, and a good Fed meeting, and then it'll be off to the races. Yeah, I do believe a relatively high conviction.
I've got to agree. I mean, on that one for sure. I know, Ben, it's all about time. I think if we can just get some, I mean, look what happened when good old Elon Musk came out and said, hey, we're going to put things in the Bitcoin, and then PayPal right around the corner. It was like a rocket fuel. If we can get a little bit of peace, and then we can get actually the CFTC and the SEC and the OCC to actually meet together and go, this is how we're going to regulate, and it's not too heavy-handed, I think we're off for the races again.
And for the FASB, if the FASB changed their accounting rules,
so
they wouldn't treat Bitcoin like baseball cards, I think that would change the treasury game as well. There's tech companies sitting on $100 billion in cash, melting away at 15 to 21% per year. And now what they've decided to do is said, okay, we can't invest the cash anywhere, so we're just going to make acquisitions with it. So they're not even using their stock to make acquisitions, using cash. Like Google did a huge one a few days ago. So
I should say with the altcoin stuff, one thing to consider is that there's certainly not one strategy that suits everyone. So I think people that are looking to preserve their wealth during this risk off time that we've been in, they probably want to be heavier into Bitcoin. For people who are looking to be riskier and try to create wealth, then I can understand being a little bit more risky on altcoins, because there's always a chance that you time the bottom and that you actually make more money than the people who are more risk averse. It's just, I think the longer you're in crypto, I think more people just, after a long time, after so many years of seeing so many altcoins come and go, eventually, I think most people just sort of say, all right, I just want to focus on the blue chips for a while and stop stressing about which altcoin is going to have drama this week. So
yeah,
and there are some select areas where you can still do well. Like for those that got some bottom fishing in on Luna around 46, 47, that went up 120%, I think, in about 17 days. That was a huge move. So there is still some effervescence out there on the market if you can time it.
Yeah. And lastly, before we move on, it's just like what we were talking about, people getting scammed. You're 18, 19, 20, and you're putting everything into Bitcoin. Probably, I mean, not financial advice, just financial opinion, probably a good way. But if you're that young, you probably could take a little more risk. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I mean, look, there's some pretty great projects out there that will probably outperform Bitcoin at some point, but really it just depends on your risk preference, your risk tolerance. I think that's the bigger thing to think about, because we can't tell you what to do. All right. So off of that one, let's talk about it. Wallet number 3. Ben, I'm going to start with you, because this video, you were the one that talked to me about it first. And I was like, I don't know what that is. So break it down real quick. Wallet number 3, is this the ultimate guide to crypto buying and selling right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we saw wallet number 3. By the way, for those that don't know, wallet number 3, no one really knows who it belongs to. There's been a lot of speculation about it. But they currently hold, I believe, 126,000 Bitcoin. Let me see what they have right now. They have 126,341 Bitcoin, which is currently worth, over just approximately $5 billion. But one of the interesting things is that, the last time they sold off 1,500 Bitcoin was actually at 67K, and you might say, well, 1,500 Bitcoin, that's a lot. It is a lot, it is it's a ton, but for them, it was only like just over 1% of their stack, so it's not like they sold everything. They just sold a little over 1%. And then they actually started accumulating again, just like a week or two later. But what's interesting is we've actually seen them recently. They have some pretty good timing on some of this stuff. So like, for instance, during some of these drops, they were basically buying Bitcoin throughout all of January at 40K, at 35K, at 33K. And in February, they were buying as well. But they stopped buying Bitcoin on February 3rd at 37K. And then it was like crickets. We didn't hear anything from them. And then on March 1st, about a month later, they sold 1,500 at around $44,000. Now, I should say there's one caveat. We don't technically know if these are buys and sells. They're just transfers potentially. But just taking it for what it is, I mean, it's on-chain data. Take it with a grain of salt to some degree. But on March 1st, we saw 1,500 Bitcoin go out again. And on March 1st, that was more or less the local top at around $44,000. And then what's interesting is they started buying Bitcoin at 38.2K about 6 days after that, which again was another more or less local bottom. We went down to 37K. They bought some more a few days later at 38.5K. So I think it's interesting because I don't really fall into the camp that I've heard some people say that, because institutions are here, that we can never see the market go down, 50% again, which we've already proven that wrong, right? Because we've already gone down more than 50% 2 times now. That's happened. But I think to some degree, people think that institutions can never lose money. Institutions lose money all the time. Hedge funds lose money all the time. And it's because of the carry that they have to take from one year to another is one of the reasons why most hedge funds aren't successful and they have to close it down and start another one because they'll never catch back up on the losses they incurred one year. So large money is not always accurate, but we have seen that this wallet, at least locally over the last few months, they transferred out a decent amount of Bitcoin at 67. They bought through January at some lower prices. They took some profits when it went to 44,000. They bought again when it dropped back down. So they've actually been doing a pretty decent job. So maybe before you buy or sell Bitcoin, you should ask, what would will number 3 do?
What will number 3 do? Hey, Ben, real quick, where can you pull it up on your site or do you put it on BitInfo charts, or where do you get it? Yeah,
I just have it on BitInfo charts. I mean, I'll probably eventually get everything, all this stuff. We're slowly, but we have like 5 software developers working on the website, building as anything we can imagine. But this will eventually be there, I think. But right now, you have to go to bitinfocharts.com. And then if you go to the top and you go to the rich list, and they actually have the rich list for other coins too, like Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. I don't know why anyone would care about those, but if you care about them, there they are. But you can also just look at it for Bitcoin. By the way, Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash are great examples of coins that do nothing but bleed against Bitcoin and Ethereum over the macro scale. So the opportunity cost on them is too high.
Yeah. Hey, real quick. So this is BitInfo charts. I brought this up, and then you got your rich list. We're on Bitcoin right now. Yeah. Wall number 3. Where do we go again? I forget.
Just go to the third one. It's number 3 there. You can see the third wallet. So you can see that they most recently had you can see they picked up 412 Bitcoin. Recently 318, but you can see that transfer of 1,500 out was at right around 44K.
Okay.
Which was basically the local top, before we came back down. So, and actually, if you spend a lot of time perusing this website, there's a lot of whales that I've noticed. Like you'll see like a lot of Bitcoin go out, and then like a day or two later, you'll see a similar amount of Bitcoin come back in, but it'll be like a marginally higher amount. So it seems like maybe they sold their Bitcoin, then they waited a few days and then just bought it back for a slightly cheaper price just to marginally increase their stack.
Yeah, I did a video on this one. I got to tell you, there's not a lot of sales. It is a lot of accumulation.
Actually, we've
here.
Yeah, look at the price, 67.
Yeah, we've analyzed the data on this guy.
I mean, to be fair though, to point out, like if you look at just higher on November 12th, they did buy 1100 Bitcoin back at 64K. So it's not like they're perfect. I'm not. So they're not. They're simply not. But one of the things it does go to show is that like no one knows what is going to happen in this market. Like absolutely no one. And some whales, by the way, if you can trust the on-chain transactions, like some whales are down like $300 million, right? So if you thought you were having a bad day, there's some guys that are down potentially $300 million because they've been buying it at 50K, 60K for so long, and now it's at $38,000. But if you can like scroll through all the wallets and you'll find all sorts of wallets. There's a lot of wallets, by the way, just very quickly. There's a lot of wallets that bought a lot of Bitcoin in December of 2018. And then they didn't do anything for a year and a half, maybe 2.5. They bought some in December 2018, and then they bought again 2.5 years later, I believe, in the summer of 2021 at 30K, right around 30K. So they bought it like 3,100 or 3,500, didn't do anything for 2.5 years, and then bought more in the summer of 2021. And those wallets have not done anything yet. They haven't been doing anything since the summer of 21.
Son of a gun. James, what you were about to say something. I think I cut you off.
Yeah, there's about we have analyzed the data of this wallet number 3 guy, and it's interesting. There's about 600 trades that matter, and it looks like from the time that they got in, they were learning. So this tells us this is a newbie to the crypto space. This is not an OG that has been doing this for a long time, because they would know how to mask their wallets and transactions, unlike this group or guy or individual. Now, the average chunk of Bitcoin they sell per transaction is about 1,563. The average sell price since the history is about 37,500. The average buy is 1,119 coins at an average price of 28,461. But they made all their money. They invested about 3 billion. They made 2 billion, but they made all their money because they bought 40,000 Bitcoin at an average price of about $5,400.
Yeah,
and that's where they made the killing. But their timing has gotten better, but boy, was it crap for a long time. They'd be selling at the wrong time and buying at the wrong time up until around March, April 2021. Then something happened. They got a little bit better. So they got better at layering in and layering out. And what's very interesting is how, and Ben, I'm sure you've seen this as well, how they've gotten much better at playing this short-term choppiness, interim term tops. And it was also very bullish as well to see the fact that they bought at 38.2, 38.5. So that ties into the thesis that we have higher lows going up. We had 33, then we had 35, 35.5 twice, 36, and now it's 38. So that's a positive sign that we are in this higher low type environment. But overall, fascinating to watch. And they're getting better and better with their trades and DCAing, layering in, layering out all the time.
Do you see that? I find this really funny that they're like, okay, I'm just going to dabble at $3 and then $20 and then 41 million. Like, unlike my 9th trade or something like that. That's hilarious.
Yeah. No, so, it looks very much like somebody managing a fund for, I don't know if it's an oligarch or if it's Zhang Yiming out of Hong Kong, the guy who's worth 50 billion who owns TikTok, or if it's Ray Dalio or Larry Page or Larry Ellison. But whoever it is, to be able to drop 3 billion means they have to be worth at least 50 billion. That's my thesis. Or the fund has to be worth at least 50 billion.
Yeah, I thought it was Nancy Pelosi's husband, but I guess he doesn't have $50 billion. Okay.
So may he rest in peace. I think he died last week.
Oh my God. Awful. Yeah. So that leaves us for it. Thanks so much, guys. So let's just open it up to the questions and we'll go from there. Also, thanks to all the moderators. Help me out. Kate, Wen Mullet, I appreciate it so much. So now let's get into the Qs and we'll get out of here. It's Friday. Man, that took a long time. It's almost 5 o'clock.
I thought we had nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I think we answered it all. Good job, everybody. Great job. Is ETH Classic Gold 2.0? Hey, what is? They dropped that name for ETH 2.0, right? Now it's something different.
It's Beardy Day. He's the funniest guy.
Beardy Day, funny. Let's see. This might be good. what else do you need for you to hold? I guess if you're looking at things to hold, leading tech companies are building crypto rails, and our government just told us they see crypto as an opportunity to stay a global leader. Well, I guess, I mean, if you take a look at the news thing, I mean, if you look just the news, you would say to yourself, this is a no-brainer. But if you take a look at just the time as goes on, I mean, this is it. I think we talked about this in length, but does anybody want to add on to this point?
Yeah, again, we've seen 5 years of development happen within 12 months, I believe. You know, the so-called India effect. I think nothing but positive ahead. I was extremely relieved to see the government taking their stance. So all goodness. And the world is changing, and traditional finance is ripe for disruption. And I think whoever is advising the US government knows that.
You know, I don't know what's, I would think that they would be a little bit more responsible in their, how they do the actions as far as rolling out these regulations. But it seems like it's kind of like a free for all. But I mean, I will say it was good they didn't just shut it down and go, we're going to be aggressive like Elizabeth Warren kind of wants to be. They really did they just bring into the best parts of the government to say, let's all figure this out and not just go a little bit too crazy. Even Lummis is part of that. All right. So I don't see, like, there's no questions. Just everybody loves Ben and James. That's about it. And they all hate Peter Schiff, whoever that is. I don't know who that is. So let's see. Yeah, I think that's, I can't say that. Where to go? Oh, here's a question. This Rob fellow texting here. Where do you get APY in stable coins? That'd be a question for you guys too. BlockFi and Celsius don't allow it in Texas. DAI, a safe alternative. So you can put it into a Voyager. They give you a nice yield. I think it's between 9 and 11%. I forgot for USDC. So that's where I put mine. I for Celsius, but also remember I'm from Texas, but now I live in Puerto Rico. So that's that gives me some serious advantages over some other things too. So what do you guys think for good yield? If you do that, I don't think you really do that much.
I don't have any specific recommendations. I do dabble a lot in DeFi, personally. I do, but I don't recommend anything because I know how easy it is to get rugged in those projects, and I don't want to be associated necessarily with any of them. So I don't have any specific recommendations, but there's plenty of centralized platforms and decentralized platforms that you can use.
Gotcha. James, what do you got? Anything that do you even do that stuff? Or you just trade?
I dabble a little bit, but mostly just trading. And one of the concerns I have, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You know, people offer 70%, 50%, 20% APY. Just be very careful, or make sure you understand the underlying asset you have. Again, Watson here and the company, he calls it Ponzinomics. So it's all fake, you know. So just be careful what you're invested in. If you can get just straight 6, 8, 10% on USDC, USDT, UST, kind of take it. But everything beyond that, be careful.
Yeah. And then we'll wrap it up with this because it's getting late. How do you guys track capital gains tax to make sure you aren't actually losing on a winning trade? Simple calculation, apps, tips, tricks. What do you guys use? Ben, I'll start with you. Do you even, well, you don't really sell that much.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I really sold a lot was back in early 2021 during that rally. I mean, the bounce in November was pretty difficult, I think. But yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of apps out there that you can use, like tons of crypto tax platforms that you can use, and a lot of them just simply have like calculators that'll show you, you know, what are your capital gains. I mean, I think anyone in the United States has to consider the difference between short-term and long-term capital gains. Like, you don't want to take a huge hit on say a Bitcoin position in short-term capital gains unless you're absolutely convinced it's about to go down like 50% or more. Because even if it goes down 15%, like if you told me Bitcoin's going to go down 10% tomorrow, I still don't know if I would, because I don't necessarily want to deal with all the tax implications and everything, because you got to go pay the taxes on the gains and everything, or yeah, I mean, whatever it is. And I mean, there's plenty of apps. There's plenty of crypto tracking apps. I've used plenty of them. I think there's a lot of good ones. So just Google it. I mean, just Google crypto Google crypto tax platform, and you'll find like probably 100 different platforms that'll provide what you're looking for.
Yeah. And I always tell you, like, there's a link in the description. I use CryptoTrader.tax. They have a free tracking software that you can just put all your trades into, direct API. It's pretty cool for that. James, what do you use anything, or just, because I know, I mean, you trade a lot, man. You trade a lot. So
yeah, well, my brokerage accounts handle all of my capital gains. There's a special embedded capital gains platform in there. And for crypto, I use an old-fashioned spreadsheet.
Makes sense. So, easy enough.
It's locked down. I don't necessarily want to plug my my trades into some public API for obvious reasons.
And then this is the last one because someone did a super chat. Sol on ETH price if we hit 20K Bitcoin. If that happens, Ben, ETH, where do we at?
First of all, let's say it's if it happens. We're not saying it will happen, but if it happens. So if Bitcoin goes to 20K, you have to, where do you first think about? You have to think about if Bitcoin can go to its prior all-time high, Ethereum could go to its prior all-time high, right? So if you see a 20K Bitcoin, then that means $1,400 ETH is in the cards because that's their prior all-time highs. So I would say that, Solana, I don't really follow Solana as much, but what is it out right now? It's at like $80 or something. So, if the floor falls out, if Bitcoin is able to drop another 50%, then you generally assume that altcoins are probably going to drop worse. So, if Bitcoin's at 20K, then you're probably looking at a sub $40 Solana, or maybe around a $40 Solana. But that would basically be, again, if Bitcoin goes to 20K, which there's no guarantee.
And James is doing calculations in the back as you're talking. And he's like,
yeah, exactly. Right. Ben beat me to the punch. He's at $40. Yeah. Perfect. I do believe, as discussed yesterday, that a lot of the winning layer ones are very actually undervalued considering the amount of transactions they're processing. When you compare them to traditional banks, asset management funds, et cetera, they really, for the amount that they're processing, they're actually quite undervalued. So there'll come a time. Everything runs in cycles right now. Right now, there's just a huge dark cloud hanging over a lot of the alts. It's kind of Bitcoin season, but that'll all change. You just got to wait, be patient. Perfect. And then the winners will run away.
Yeah, just be patient. If you don't like the price right now, it's like the rain in Puerto Rico. It'll change in 5 minutes. So look, that's it for today, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it. Remember, Ben and James' channel can be found in the description. Also, you can find Ben's website, app.Into The Cryptoverse, and also James's Patreon group. Also linked there, as well as our YouTube channel. So check those out. And that's it for today. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye.